Before we begin today's story, I'd like to say a quick prayer for you, my dear family. May your days be filled with peace, your heart with joy, and your steps guided by light. Amen. If you're happy to be here, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a story. The chandeliers glittered like frozen fire, spilling golden light across the grand hall of the Valencia auction house, where fortunes shifted hands in the span of a heartbeat. Every chair was filled with tailored suits, glittering gowns, and the sharp scent of power mingling with rare perfumes. The air itself seemed heavy with money, with ambition, with hunger. Evelyn Carter sat in the very last row, her hands pressed protectively against her swollen belly. At 8 months pregnant, she had no business being here. Not when every step made her ankles ache. Not when her back screamed in protest. But desperation drove her, as it so often did these days. On the stage, a rare diamond necklace glittered under the spotlight, drawing gasps and the quick rise of paddles. The bidding leapt from $200,000 to $500,000 in mere breaths. Numbers tossed like crumbs in a room full of wolves. Evelyn flinched at the sums, not because she longed for jewels, but because she couldn't remember the last time she had more than $50 to her name. She hadn't come here to buy. She'd come here to sell. Her fingers toyed with the chain around her neck, the only heirloom her mother had left her. A delicate gold pendant, worn but still beautiful, wrapped in memories. She had promised herself she'd never part with it. But promises meant nothing when the rent notice glared at her from the kitchen counter, when baby clothes remained folded in the store because she couldn't afford them. Her stomach tightened. Not with contraction, she told herself quickly, but with nerves, just nerves, up front. The auctioneer's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. $1 million. Do I hear 1.2? Yes. 1.2 to the gentleman in the navy suit. And that was when Evelyn's gaze snagged on him. He sat near the front, his posture effortless yet commanding, as though the entire room bent toward him without his lifting a finger. Alexander Drake. Everyone in the city knew his name. Billionaire investor, ruthless dealmaker, tabloid favorite. Some called him charming, others called him dangerous, but all agreed on one thing. He was untouchable. Even from across the glittering hall, Evelyn felt the sharp weight of his presence. He raised his paddle once, a slight motion of his hand, and the room shifted. Competitors hesitated. Whispers rippled. And just like that, the necklace was his. $1.5 million. Pocket change. Evelyn's throat tightened. Her unborn child kicked softly, as if sensing her unrest. What was she doing here? A single mother-to-be in a room where fortunes were spent for sport? The pendant around her neck felt heavier with every passing second. She shifted in her chair, ready to leave, when suddenly a sharp pain gripped her stomach. Her hand flew instinctively to her belly. Not nerves, not a trick of the mind. Real, strong, immediate. Her water broke. A hush rippled through the back rows as a dark stain spread across the front of her dress, the sound of liquid hitting marble unmistakable. Gasps followed, then whispers, then the cruel little chuckles of the rich, always eager for a spectacle. Evelyn's face burned. Her hands shook as she tried to rise, but the pain doubled her over. She was dimly aware of voices. Oh God, she's pregnant. Is she going to labor here? Get her out. She's ruining the atmosphere. Her chest tightened. She wanted to vanish, to sink into the marble floor and disappear. And then his voice cut through the chaos. Clear the way. Deep, commanding, sharp as steel. Alexander Drake was on his feet, his navy suit moving like liquid shadow as he strode toward her. The crowd parted for him without question, as though the sea itself obeyed his command. In moments he was at her side, his eyes, startlingly dark, startlingly alive, locking on hers. "You're in labor." Not a question, a certainty. She tried to speak, but another contraction ripped through her, leaving her breathless. "Don't move," he said, already bending to lift her as though she weighed nothing. "I've got you." The chandeliers glittered above them as the millionaire carried her out of the auction house, the eyes of the elite burning holes into their retreating figures. To Evelyn it was all a blur, the gold, the whispers, the scandal already being written in someone's gossip column. All she could feel was the strength of his arms. All she could hear was the pounding of her own heart. And somewhere in the whirl of fear and pain, a thought struck her. This stranger, this powerful, dangerous man. Why does she feel safe? The sirens wailed as the black limousine tore through the city streets, its tinted windows hiding the chaos within. Evelyn clutched her belly, breath ragged as each contraction tightened around her like a vice. She'd been in cars before, but never one this luxurious, buttery leather seats, chilled air, and the faint scent of expensive cologne. Yet none of it mattered. Pain and fear drowned everything. Opposite her sat Alexander Drake, one hand braced on his knee, the other resting near her, but never quite touching. His dark eyes stayed fixed on her face, sharp and calculating yet strangely protective. He had canceled the auction as if it were nothing, swept her into his car, and now commanded the city itself to make way. "Breathe," he said firmly, his voice steady against her panic. "In through your nose, out through your mouth." I know how to breathe," she gasped, sweat dampening her hairline. Another contraction slammed into her, and she cried out, clutching the pendant still hanging around her neck. Alexander leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "Then look at me. Focus." Her eyes, glazed with pain, met his. And for reasons she couldn't explain, the command worked. The noise of the city faded. The grip of panic loosened. For a brief moment, all she saw was him. A man too controlled, too polished, yet burning with an intensity that felt like it could split her open. The car screeched to a halt outside St. Raphael's Medical Center. Doors flew open, paramedics rushing forward. Evelyn barely remembered being lifted onto a gurney, bright lights swallowing her vision. But she remembered one thing, Alexander's voice, low and certain at her side. "I'm not leaving you." Hours blurred into a whirlwind of antiseptic halls, shouted instructions, and the searing pain of labor. Evelyn screamed until her throat felt raw, her body convulsing under the relentless push of contractions. Somewhere beyond the haze, she heard doctors urging, nurses moving, and always, always his voice grounding her. "Almost there. You're stronger than you know. Breathe, Evelyn. You're not alone." She wanted to laugh, to curse him, to collapse into his words, all at once. How could a stranger sound so certain? How could a man who lived in a world of millions see her in this raw, broken state and not recoil? Then the cry split the air. High, piercing, alive. The world stopped. A nurse lifted the tiny, wriggling form into Evelyn's arms. Tears flooded her eyes as she stared at the miracle she had carried for 8 long months. "My baby," she whispered, voice trembling. "Oh, my baby." Her son's tiny fingers curled around her thumb, and something inside her cracked open, flooding with love and fear so fierce it stole her breath. But even through the tears, she felt it. Another gaze. She looked up, and there was Alexander, standing at her bedside, his expression unreadable, except for his eyes. They burned with something she didn't expect. Wonder. He didn't touch the child. He didn't intrude. But he stood there, silent and unyielding, as though claiming this moment in his own way. The doctor cleared his throat. "Mother and child are healthy. Congratulations." Evelyn barely heard him. Her body sagged with exhaustion, but her mind whirled. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. She had planned to be alone, to face it quietly, to raise her child without interference. But now the most powerful man in the room, in the city, perhaps in her entire world, had been there when her son took his first breath. And when she finally drifted into sleep, her last thought was a whisper that both terrified and comforted her. "Why does it feel like he belongs here?" Evelyn woke to dim light. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed and glistening beneath morning sun. She shifted weakly, the weight of her newborn resting in the bassinet beside her. And then she froze. He was still there. Alexander Drake sat in the corner of the hospital suite, jacket removed, sleeves rolled up. He looked out of place in the sterile room, too sharp, too commanding. Yet his gaze was fixed on the tiny child. His normally cold expression softened into something she almost didn't recognize. "You stayed," she whispered hoarsely. His eyes flicked to hers. "I told you I wouldn't leave." Evelyn swallowed, unsure what to say. Gratitude and unease tangled inside her chest. She shifted slightly, her voice breaking. "Why? You don't even know me." For the first time, a faint smile ghosted across his lips, not warm, but dangerous in its certainty. "Because from the moment your water broke on that marble floor, you became my responsibility." His gaze swept over her, then landed firmly on the baby. "Both of you." Her heart stuttered. A chill swept through her veins, mingling with heat she couldn't name. This was madness. This was impossible. Yet as his words hung in the air, she knew with bone-deep certainty. Alexander Drake never said anything he didn't mean. The knock on the hospital door was sharp and insistent. Evelyn stirred against her pillows, startled. Before she could answer, the door cracked open and a nurse slipped in, her cheeks pink with discomfort. "Miss Carter," she said cautiously, "the lobby is crowded." Evelyn frowned. "Crowded?" The nurse hesitated, then admitted, "Reporters." Somehow, word got out about the incident at the auction house last night. Heat rushed to Evelyn's cheeks. Of course. The room had been filled with the city's richest and most influential, people who thrived on whispers and spectacle. A pregnant woman's water breaking on polished marble, and being carried out in the arms of Alexander Drake himself. It was a story made for gossip columns. "They're demanding a statement," the nurse continued. "The hospital security is holding them back for now, but they won't get near her." Alexander's voice cut across the room, calm but sharp enough to slice the air. He had risen from his chair, his tall frame filling the space with quiet authority. "I'll handle it." The nurse nodded quickly and slipped out, relieved to have the burden shifted. Evelyn's stomach tightened, but this time not from contractions. "You don't have to." "Yes," Alexander interrupted, his eyes locking on hers. "I do." He crossed to the window, parting the blinds, just enough for her to glimpse the chaos below. Flashing cameras, shouted questions, headlines already scrolling across digital tickers on passing news vans. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "Oh God, this is a nightmare." Alexander turned back, his expression unreadable, but his gaze steady. "It's only a nightmare if you face it alone, which you won't." Her lips parted, but words failed her. No one had ever said that to her. No one had ever stood between her and the storm. 2 hours later, Evelyn was discharged with her newborn cradled in her arms. She expected Alexander to leave then, to return to his empire of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. Instead, his sleek limousine waited at the curb, and the rear door was already open. She froze. "I can't." "You can," Alexander said simply, his voice brooking no argument. "And you will. The press knows your name now. They know your face. Do you really think you'll be safe in that tiny apartment of yours with paparazzi circling like vultures?" Her jaw clenched. "How do you even know where I live?" "I know everything that concerns me." His eyes softened by the faintest degree as they dropped to the baby in her arms. And right now you concern me. Both of you. The words should have infuriated her, but instead they tangled around her heart, equal parts comfort and warning. I don't need a savior, she whispered. His lips curved, not in amusement, but in certainty. Good, because I'm not here to save you. He held her gaze. I'm here to claim what's mine. The words hit her like a jolt of electricity. Her pulse skittered. Yours. He stepped closer, his presence towering, undeniable. From the moment I carried you out of that auction house, Evelyn Carter, you and that child became my responsibility. You can fight it all you want, but I don't walk away from what's mine. The baby stirred in her arms, a soft cry breaking the charged silence. Evelyn tore her gaze away, clutching her son tighter. Her mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. This was madness. A stranger, a millionaire with power she couldn't comprehend, was inserting himself into her life as if fate had given him the right. And yet, deep down, a terrifying truth pulsed in her chest. Some part of her wanted to believe him. The limousine ride to his penthouse was surreal. The city blurred past in streaks of steel and glass. But Evelyn barely noticed. Her focus stayed on the tiny bundle in her arms and the man seated across from her, calm and controlled as though he hadn't just upended her entire world. Alexander's penthouse crowned the skyline like a fortress of glass and marble. The moment she stepped inside, her breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows spilled light across sleek, modern furnishings. City lights glittered below like 1,000 fallen stars. This isn't a home, she whispered, an unease mixing in her chest. It's a palace. Alexander handed his jacket to the waiting housekeeper. His movements precise, efficient. It's where you'll be safe. Evelyn spun toward him, clutching her child. You can't just decide that for me. His eyes flicked to her, dark and unyielding. I can, and I have. The defiance on her tongue faltered under the weight of his gaze. Because beneath the arrogance, beneath the steel, she saw something she didn't expect. Sincerity. This isn't charity, Alexander continued, his voice low. And it isn't pity. It's instinct. He took a step closer, his presence swallowing the space between them. I don't know why, Evelyn, but from the moment you looked at me in that auction house, something in me shifted. You and that child is jaw tightened. You belong here, with me. Her breath hitched. The room felt suddenly too small, too charged, as if the city itself held its breath. And Evelyn Carter, broke, alone terrified, realized with bone-deep certainty that her life had just changed forever. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing a space Evelyn could hardly comprehend. The penthouse wasn't just an apartment. It was a kingdom above the clouds. Polished marble gleamed underfoot, while crystal fixtures rained golden light from a ceiling. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across every wall, giving a sweeping view of the city skyline, alive with glittering lights. Evelyn clutched her baby tighter. This isn't my world. I don't belong here. Alexander's stride was confident, purposeful. He handed his phone and jacket to a silent assistant who disappeared without a word, then turned back toward her. His eyes scanned her, not in judgment, but as though memorizing every flicker of her expression. You'll stay here, he said simply. The guest wing is fully prepared. The nursery will be arranged by tomorrow. She blinked. Nursery? His gaze shifted to the child in her arms, softening almost imperceptibly. He deserves the best. And so do you. Evelyn's lips parted, outrage flaring. You don't even know me. You can't just install me in your home like some guest. His tone was smooth, controlled, but his eyes glinted with something sharper. Protégé? Or perhaps responsibility? Her cheeks burned. Prisoner. The word hung in the air like shattered glass. Alexander's jaw ticked, but his expression didn't break. A cage keeps you locked away. This, he swept a hand toward the glittering skyline, is protection. I never asked for your protection. His eyes narrowed, his voice lowering to a dangerous calm. And yet you need it. Paparazzi are clawing for your story. Scandals are already circulating about the mystery woman who trapped Alexander Drake. Evelyn flinched. They're saying that? They always do, he replied coldly. Because envy feeds on rumor, and rumor feeds on women like you. Women like me, she shot back. For the first time, a crack split his composure. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. Strong women, defiant women, women who dare to exist outside the mold this city tries to shove them into. His voice lowered, almost reverent. They'll tear you apart, Evelyn, unless you stand beside someone untouchable. Her heart hammered. She wanted to deny him, to push back, but his words struck too close to her deepest fear. Being alone, being swallowed whole by a world sharper than knives. Still, her chin lifted. And what did you get out of this? His answer came without hesitation. You. Her breath caught. Not money, not scandal control, not reputation. Just her. The room spun. Evelyn tore her gaze away, clutching her son like a shield. This is insane. Perhaps, Alexander said softly, but I don't walk away from what fate throws into my arms. The guest suite was larger than her entire apartment. Velvet drapes framed panoramic windows, the bed dressed in silk, the closet filled with garments she had never seen before. Dresses, coats, even nursing gowns, each one her exact size. Evelyn stood frozen at the threshold. How could he know? A discreet knock startled her. A woman in her 50s entered, elegant, kind-eyed, carrying a tray of warm food. I'm Mrs. Dalton, house manager. If you need anything at all, I'll see to it. Evelyn opened her mouth, but her stomach betrayed her first, growling loudly. Mrs. Dalton smiled warmly. I'll take the baby while you eat. But Evelyn's arms tightened reflexively. No, he stays with me. Of course, the woman said gently. She set the tray down, steaming soup, roasted chicken, fresh bread, and slipped out without another word. Evelyn sank onto the edge of the bed, trembling. Her baby stirred, fussing softly, and she pressed a kiss to his tiny forehead. Tears pricked her eyes. This isn't real, she whispered. It can't be. And yet, outside her window, the city glittered endless and cold, and somewhere in the vast penthouse beyond, a man of steel and shadows had just claimed them both. Meanwhile, in his study, Alexander stood at the window with a glass of scotch, untouched, in his hand. His empire stretched out below him, contracts waiting for his signature, meetings demanding his presence. But for the first time in years, he didn't care. His mind was consumed not by deals, but by her, Evelyn Carter, a woman who should have been nothing more than a stranger. Yet now, every protective instinct in him burned like fire. He had wealth, power, influence. But until last night, he hadn't realized how empty it all felt. Now, for reasons he couldn't explain, he wanted more. No, he wanted her. Morning sunlight spilled across the penthouse, gilding everything in soft gold. Evelyn stirred awake to the unfamiliar weight of silk sheets. Her baby nestled against her chest. For a brief, fleeting moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality slammed back. The marble floors, the velvet drapes, the faint hum of the city far below, Alexander Drake's empire, and she a guest trapped within it. A knock sounded at the door. Evelyn tensed. Who is it? The door eased open. Mrs. Dalton appeared, carrying a silver tray. Breakfast, Miss Carter. I don't need, Evelyn began, but the smell of warm croissants and fresh fruit betrayed her empty stomach. Her baby stirred, fussing, and Mrs. Dalton set the tray on the table with a smile. Eat, the housekeeper urged gently. He'll rest better if you're strong. Evelyn swallowed her protest. She fed her son first, then finally sat down to eat, her fingers trembling around the crystal glass of orange juice. She had never lived like this, not even close. Her last apartment had been a shoebox above a noisy laundromat. Her meals often a choice between cheap noodles or day-old bread. And now this, it felt dangerous, intoxicating, like standing too close to the edge of a cliff. By midday, Evelyn couldn't bear the suffocating quiet. She left the guest wing, wandering the endless hallways until she stumbled into a vast living room where Alexander stood, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. His phone pressed his ear. The sight of him stole her breath. Sharp lines, controlled power, a man carved out of glass and steel. He ended the call smoothly, his gaze landing on her instantly. "You're awake." "I'm not your prisoner," she said, her voice sharper than intended. "I can leave whenever I want." His lips curved faintly. "Of course you can." He gestured toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. Far below, cameras still flashed outside the building. Reporters clustered like vultures at the entrance. "But if you walk out now, you won't make it a block before your face is plastered across every screen in the city." Evelyn's stomach twisted. He was right. Alexander crossed the bar and poured a glass of water, not scotch. He handed it to her, his movements deliberate, almost intimate. "I don't say this to trap you. I say it because I don't let what's mine be torn apart." Her throat tightened. "You keep saying that I'm yours, that we're yours, but you don't even know me." For the first time his mask slipped, his eyes dark and steady, flickered with something raw. "Then let me." The silence between them thickened, charged, alive. That evening, Evelyn found herself in the penthouse's library, an expansive room lined with leather-bound volumes and glass cases. Her fingers traced the spines absently as she paced. "You read?" His voice startled her. Alexander leaned against the doorway, jacket discarded, tie loosened. He looked different now, less untouchable, more human. "Of course I read," Evelyn said defensively. His lips curved slightly. "Good. Most women I meet don't look twice at these books. They prefer what money can buy, not what it can teach." She narrowed her eyes. "And you think I'm different?" "I know you are." Evelyn's pulse fluttered wildly. She turned back to the shelves, desperate to steady herself. But his presence filled the room like gravity. Alexander stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Tell me, Evelyn, what do you want?" Truly, her throat closed. No one had ever asked her that before. Not her parents, not the father of her child, not anyone. "I want," she hesitated, the truth clawing at her chest. "I want to be seen, not pitted, not saved, just seen." Alexander's gaze burned into her, unflinching. "Then let me be the one who sees you." Her heart stuttered, and for the first time since stepping into this glass palace, Evelyn wondered if she was fighting the wrong battle. That night, as she lay in the silk-draped bed, the city lights shimmering beyond the window, Evelyn admitted a terrifying truth to herself. The walls she had built to survive were starting to crack, and Alexander Drake was the one breaking through. The next morning, Evelyn awoke to the shrill ring of a phone somewhere beyond her suite. For a moment, she thought it was her old alarm clock back in her cramped apartment, until her baby stirred against her chest and she remembered where she was. The penthouse. Alexander Drake's world. A world that had no mercy for mistakes. By the time she emerged into the hallway, Alexander was already pacing the living room. Phone pressed to his ear. His voice like ice. "I don't care what spin they're running. Kill the story before noon." His jaw flexed as he paused to listen. "Then bury the journalist. If he wants a career, he'll learn who not to cross." Evelyn froze, clutching the baby tighter. His words weren't directed at her, but the force behind them was undeniable. This was the other side of Alexander Drake, not the man who had offered her water in the library, but the ruthless businessman who carved empires out of granite. He turned. Their eyes met, His voice softened, almost imperceptibly. "I'll call you back." The call ended, leaving silence thick enough to choke on. What are they saying about me?" Evelyn whispered. Alexander studied her for a long moment. "You don't need to know." Her heart kicked against her ribs. "That bad?" He stepped closer, his movements slow, deliberate, like a predator approaching prey, though his gaze held no malice, only certainty. They see a headline. "I see a woman with fire in her eyes who won't bend to anyone, and I'll be damned if I let them twist that into something it's not." Evelyn's lips parted, but no words came. She felt small and enormous all at once beneath his gaze. By midday, Mrs. Dalton brought in a newspaper, folded discreetly, but Evelyn caught the bold headline flashing from the page. "Mystery woman at auction. Who stole the city's coldest millionaire?" Heat surged up her neck. She snatched the paper and scanned the article. Half-truths, lies, speculation about her schemes to trap Alexander, about the baby's paternity, about her background. They painted her as a manipulative gold digger. Her hands shook. "They don't even know me." "They don't need to," Alexander said, his voice cutting. He took the paper from her trembling grip and tossed it into the fire. "What matters is what I know." Her chest tightened. "And what did he know?" His eyes locked onto hers, searing, unyielding. "That you belong to me, and I'll make sure the world knows it too." The words landed like a thunderclap. "Belong," she echoed, her voice breaking between fear and something dangerously close to longing. Alexander's lips curved, not in amusement, but in possession. "Yes, and I don't share." That evening, Evelyn was half-dragged, half-led into Alexander's study. A man in a sleek black suit stood waiting, holding a leather folder. He introduced himself as Marcus, Alexander's public relations strategist. "We need to get ahead of this," Marcus said briskly. "A press release won't be enough. Photographs, appearances, a clear statement. If you want to protect her, sir, you'll have to claim her publicly." Evelyn's head snapped toward Alexander. "Claim me? Like I'm some asset?" Alexander's jaw tightened, but his gaze never wavered. "This isn't about assets. It's about survival. If the world thinks you're just some passing scandal, they'll devour you. But if you stand beside me," his voice lowered, intimate, dangerous, "then no one will dare touch you." Her heart thudded painfully. She hated the way his words both infuriated and steadied her. "Do I even get a choice in this?" she asked bitterly. "You always have a choice," Alexander replied. But the way he said it, deep and low, made her wonder if her choices had already been bound to his from the moment her water broke in that auction hall. That night, Evelyn stood alone in the guest suite, staring at the city below. Her reflection in the glass looked like someone else, stronger, sharper, braver. But inside she was trembling. If she stayed by his side, she risked losing herself. If she walked away, she risked everything else. Behind her, the baby stirred in his crib, and Evelyn pressed a hand to the glass. Her voice was barely a whisper. "What are we getting ourselves into?" And somewhere down the hall, Alexander Drake watched her from the shadows, his decision already made. He would claim her. He would claim the child. And he would burn the world to ashes before letting either slip away. The limousine glided to a halt outside the glass and steel skyscraper, its tinted windows shielding Evelyn from the blinding barrage of cameras. Still, she could hear them. The thunderous shouts of reporters, the chaotic roar of questions, the relentless clicks of cameras firing like gunshots. Her chest tightened. She had never seen anything like it. The chaos outside was a storm, and she was the lightning rod. Across from her, Alexander sat calm, composed, devastating in his charcoal suit. His cufflinks gleamed under the interior lights, but his expression was carved from stone. "I don't want this," Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. His gaze shifted to her, softer than the rest of him, though no less intense. "You didn't choose the spotlight, Evelyn. It chose you the moment you walked into that auction. I won't let them tear you apart. Not you. Not him. His eyes flicked briefly to the baby's seat, cradled beside her. Her lips parted, words failing her. He believed what he was saying. Every syllable was iron. Just stay by my side, Alexander continued, leaning closer, his voice dropping into a low rumble that vibrated through her. No one can touch you there. The door opened. A wave of sound crashed inside. Evelyn gasped, clutching her baby. But Alexander was already stepping out, one powerful hand reaching back for her. She hesitated. Just 1 second. But in that single second, she understood. If she took his hand, she wasn't just stepping onto a sidewalk. She was stepping into his world, into his claim. And she couldn't tell if she was terrified or desperate for it. Her fingers slid into his. His grip closed instantly, unbreakable. The flashbulbs blinded her. Reporters screamed questions. Microphones shoved forward. Voices rising into frenzy. Mr. Drake, who is she? Is the baby yours? Are you getting married? Evelyn's knees nearly buckled. Alexander didn't falter. He wrapped an arm around her waist, his body a shield. His presence commanding. He didn't answer questions, didn't feed the chaos. Instead, he led her through the gauntlet with military precision. His stride smooth, unyielding. Inside the marble atrium, silence replaced the madness. Security held the doors shut. Evelyn exhaled, shaking. But it wasn't over. A podium stood ahead, microphones gleaming under the lights. Alexander guided her forward. I can't, Evelyn whispered frantically. Alexander, I can't do this. He stopped, turned, and cupped her face with a gentleness that undid her completely. Yes, you can. Because you're not alone anymore. Her eyes burned, tears threatening. And before she could argue, he released her, stepping up to the podium. The room hushed. Cameras rolled. Alexander's voice carried like thunder. There has been speculation, lies, stories meant to poison truth with scandal. Tonight I end that. He paused, letting the silence stretch, his gaze sweeping the room like a general surveying his soldiers. This woman, he extended his hand toward Evelyn. Reluctantly trembling, she stepped forward, every eye in the room searing into her. Alexander's hand closed over hers. Is Evelyn Carter, and this child is under my protection. Anyone who dares to come for them comes through me. Gasps rippled. Questions erupted. Evelyn's breath caught. He hadn't said the baby was his, but he hadn't denied it either. He hadn't said she was his, but the way he stood, the way he held her, left no doubt in anyone's mind. Her heart thundered, equal parts fear and something more dangerous. Because even though this was all for show, part of her wanted to believe him. That night, back in the safety of the penthouse, Evelyn paced the living room, fury and confusion tearing through her. You had no right to do that. Alexander leaned against the fireplace, jacket discarded, tie loosened, his expression maddeningly calm. I had every right. They needed to see the truth. That wasn't the truth, she shouted. That was a performance. You made me look like I belonged to you. He moved then, crossing the room in 3 strides, his presence overwhelming, his eyes burning into hers. You do belong to me. You just haven't accepted it yet. Her breath hitched. The silence between them pulsed, hot and alive. Why me? She whispered, her voice breaking. For once, Alexander didn't have a sharp answer. He reached up, brushed a trembling strand of hair from her face, and let his thumb linger against her cheek. His voice was rough, stripped bare. Because for the first time in years, Evelyn, I feel alive. And just like that, the walls she had built began to crack, piece by fragile piece. Evelyn stood frozen, his words echoing inside her like a slow explosion. Because for the first time in years, I feel alive. Alexander Drake, the man the world called ruthless, untouchable, unshakable, had just admitted something raw, almost fragile. She wanted to scoff, to tell him he was lying, that this was just another manipulation from a man used to getting his way. But when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see power or arrogance. She saw hunger, loneliness, and a truth so startling it left her breathless. Her heart pounded. She stepped back, shaking her head. "Don't do this to me, Alexander. Don't make me believe you feel something you don't." He followed her, his movements precise but unhurried, like a predator giving prey the illusion of escape. "You think I've ever let anyone see me like this? Do you know how many walls I've built, Evelyn? And yet somehow you," his jaw clenched, his control slipping, "you walked into my life and shattered them." Her throat tightened. "I didn't ask for this." "No," he said, his voice dropping low. "But I did." The admission silenced her. She gripped the back of a chair, grounding herself as heat rolled through her veins. Alexander reached out, his fingers grazing hers where they clutched the wood. Just the brush of his skin against hers sent a shock wave up her arm. He leaned in, his breath warm against her temple. "You can fight me, Evelyn," he murmured. "You can hate me, curse me, swear you'll never need me. But look me in the eye and tell me you don't feel this." Her lips trembled. She wanted to deny it. God, she wanted to. But when she lifted her gaze, her body betrayed her. The truth was written in her shallow breaths, in the way her pulse hammered against her throat, in the way her knees weakened when his hand finally closed over hers. "Alexander," her whisper was barely audible, a plea and a warning all at once. His control snapped. In one smooth motion, he drew her closer, his other hand sliding around her waist, anchoring her against him. His scent, smoke, cedar, and something darker, filled her senses, drowning her in heat. "I've waited too long to feel this," he growled, his lips hovering a breath from hers. "Tell me to stop, Evelyn. Say the word and I'll let you go." The world went still. The baby's soft breathing from the crib down the hall was the only reminder that reality still existed. But Evelyn didn't say stop. She couldn't. Her silence was answer enough. And when his lips finally crashed against hers, the world fell away. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was a storm breaking after too long contained. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that stole the breath from her lungs, while his hand pressed firmly into the small of her back, pulling her impossibly close. Evelyn clutched his shirt, fingers curling into the fabric, as if anchoring herself against the tide. Every line between fear and longing blurred until all that was left was fire. Hot, consuming, undeniable. When he finally tore his lips away, his forehead pressed against hers, both of them breathing hard. This is madness," Evelyn whispered, her voice shaking. "Yes," Alexander agreed, his lips brushing against hers again. "But it's our madness." For the first time, Evelyn didn't pull away. Later, alone in her room, Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, her lips still tingling, her heart still racing. The city glittered outside the windows, cold and vast, but inside she felt dangerously warm. She had told herself she would never let anyone in again, that the baby was all she needed, that men like Alexander Drake were poison-wrapped in silk. And yet, one kiss had cracked open something she wasn't sure she could ever close again. As she lay down beside her sleeping child, Evelyn whispered into the darkness, "Please don't break me." What she didn't know was that down the hall, Alexander was staring out at the same glittering skyline, a tumbler of untouched bourbon in his hand, whispering to the night, "I'll burn before I ever let you go." Evelyn woke to soft sunlight spilling across silk sheets, her body cocooned in warmth. For a fleeting second, she almost forgot where she was, until the faint scent of cedar and smoke clung to her skin, and the memory of last night came rushing back like a wave crashing against stone. The kiss, the fire in his touch, the words she hadn't stopped replaying in her head all night. "It's our madness." She sat up quickly, her pulse racing, pressing a hand to her lips as if she could erase the lingering heat. This couldn't happen. Not with him. Not when she had so much at stake. Her baby stirred in the crib beside the bed, small fingers stretching toward the morning light. Evelyn leaned down, her heart softening instantly as she kissed her son's forehead. "It's just you and me," she whispered. "That's how it's supposed to be." But the words rang hollow. Downstairs, the clatter of dishes and the faint aroma of coffee led her to the kitchen. Alexander stood at the counter, sleeves rolled up, his dark hair still slightly mussed from sleep. It was disarming. The billionaire tycoon looking almost domestic as he poured coffee into 2 mugs. Their eyes met. The air thickened instantly. "Morning," he said, voice low, steady, but softer than usual. Evelyn swallowed. "Morning." He slid a mug toward her. Their fingers brushed, and the memory of his hands on her waist last night jolted through her like electricity. She quickly withdrew, wrapping both hands around the warm ceramic instead. Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unspoken. Finally, Evelyn set her mug down with a clink. "We need to talk about last night." Alexander's gaze sharpened. "Did we?" "Yes," she snapped before softening. "That kiss, it was a mistake." He leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms, his expression infuriatingly unreadable. "Funny, it didn't feel like a mistake to me." Her cheeks burned. "You don't understand. I can't. This can't happen. Not with my child. Not with everything." He pushed off the counter, closing the space between them until she had to tilt her chin up to meet his gaze. "Evelyn," he said softly, dangerously, "I'm not a man who does things halfway. When I want something, I take it. And right now," his eyes dropped to her lips, "I want you." Her breath hitched, traitorous heat pooling low in her belly. She forced herself to step back, her voice breaking. "And what happens when you don't want me anymore? When you get bored? I've seen men like you, Alexander. You burn hot and fast, and then you leave ashes behind." The words cut. For a flicker of a second, pain crossed his face before he masked it with his usual steel. "You think I'd walk away?" His voice hardened. "I don't leave, Evelyn. People leave me." The rawness in his tone startled her. She wanted to ask what he meant, to pull at that thread, but before she could, a buzz vibrated across the counter. Alexander's phone lit up with an incoming message. He glanced at it, and the muscles in his jaw tightened. "What is it?" she asked carefully. He didn't answer right away. Finally, he slid the phone face down, but his eyes had gone cold. "Nothing you need to worry about." Evelyn's stomach twisted. She didn't believe him, and though he turned back to his coffee as if nothing had changed, she felt it. A shift, a shadow creeping into their fragile peace. The storm was coming, and when it broke, she knew nothing would ever be the same again. The afternoon sun slanted through the towering windows of the Drake estate, spilling golden light across polished marble floors. On the surface, everything looked serene. Evelyn reading softly to her baby in the nursery, Alexander buried in his office with contracts. But beneath the calm, a current of unease hummed. Evelyn felt it in the way Alexander's eyes lingered on his phone when he thought she wasn't looking. She felt it in the way the staff moved more briskly than usual, whispering when they thought she couldn't hear. Something was wrong, and she found out exactly what that something was the moment she turned on the television in the sitting room. Breaking news. The anchor's voice cut sharp against the air. Evelyn froze as her own face, grainy, taken from some old photograph, flashed across the screen. The chirrun beneath it read, "Who is the mystery woman in Alexander Drake's mansion? Sources say single mother with troubled past." Her stomach dropped. The report continued. Earlier today, an anonymous tip revealed that the woman seen entering Alexander Drake's estate during last week's auction incident is none other than Evelyn Carter, a struggling single mother with a history that may surprise many. Records show she was once engaged to Jonathan Hale, the disgraced real estate heir currently facing fraud charges. Could Mr. Drake's latest companion be hiding more than she's admitted? Her pulse roared in her ears. She fumbled to turn the TV off, her hands trembling. Jonathan. The name alone was a knife in her chest. She thought she had buried that part of her life. She thought leaving him behind meant freedom. But somehow it had clawed its way back, splashed across headlines for the entire city to dissect. The baby stirred in his crib, whimpering at her sudden sharp movements. Evelyn scooped him up, clutching him to her chest as her breath came in ragged bursts. A knock on the doorframe made her whirl around. Alexander stood there, his expression unreadable, his phone still in his hand. "You saw it," he said. It wasn't a question. Her throat tightened. "I didn't want you to find out this way." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. For once, there was no businesslike calm, no carefully measured charm. His face was hard, controlled, but his eyes burned. "Tell me everything," he said quietly. Each word weighted with command. Evelyn shook her head, clutching her baby tighter. "It's not what they're saying. Jonathan, he wasn't who I thought he was. By the time I realized, it was too late. I left him. I swore I'd never go back. And yet the world now thinks you're still tied to him." His voice was sharp cutting, but beneath it she heard something more dangerous. Fear. "Do you know what this means for you? For your child? For me?" Her own temper flared. "For you? This isn't about your reputation, Alexander. This is about my life. He ruined me once, and now he's trying to do it again." The silence between them crackled like static. Finally, Alexander closed the distance, gripping her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. His voice dropped to a vow. "Then I'll make sure he never gets the chance to touch you again." Her breath caught. He wasn't speaking like a businessman protecting an investment. He was speaking like a man staking a claim. And for the first time, Evelyn wasn't sure if that terrified her, or if it made her feel safer than she ever had before. Night draped itself over the Drake estate like a velvet curtain, the city's skyline flickering in the distance. Evelyn paced the nursery, her baby finally asleep, though her own nerves refused to quiet. The news cycle hadn't slowed all day. Reporters camped outside the estate gates. Headlines screamed her name alongside Jonathan's, painting her as complicit in his schemes. She wanted to disappear, to curl into herself and shut it all out. But Alexander wouldn't let her. "Stand tall," he told her at dinner, his voice steady as stone. "If you show weakness, they'll devour you." She'd wanted to argue, but the truth was he was right. She was still turning those words over when a commotion outside shattered the fragile calm. Raised voices, heavy footsteps. Her pulse spiked. She hurried to the landing just in time to see Alexander at the front doors, his frame blocking the entrance like a wall of iron. And there, flanked by 2 bodyguards and a smug smile plastered across his too handsome face, stood Jonathan Hale. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Jonathan looked almost exactly as she remembered, sharp tailored suit, blonde hair perfectly styled, eyes gleaming with charm that masked the rot beneath. Only now there was something darker behind his smile, something more desperate. "Alexander Drake," Jonathan drawled, as if greeting an old acquaintance. "Quite the fortress you built here. I must say I didn't expect Evelyn to land on her feet quite so comfortably after walking away from me." Evelyn froze on the stairs, her breath strangled in her chest. Alexander's jaw tightened. "You've got 10 seconds to state your business before I have you thrown off my property." Jonathan's smirk widened. Straight to the point. "Very well. I've come for what's mine." His gaze flicked up the staircase, landing on Evelyn with poisonous sweetness. Her and the child. The room tilted. Evelyn gripped the banister to steady herself, while rising in her throat. Alexander moved before she could speak, his voice low and dangerous. "You'll have Neither. Jonathan laughed. You think you can keep me from my own blood? The courts won't agree, Drake. You're powerful, yes, but money doesn't erase paternity. That child carries my name whether you like it or not. Stop it. Evelyn's voice cracked through the air, trembling but fierce. She descended the stairs, each step trembling beneath her weight. You don't get to walk back into my life and stake a claim like I'm some prize you lost at auction. You forfeited any right to me or to him. The day you chose lies and fraud over family. Jonathan's expression darkened, the mask of charm slipping just enough to reveal the cruelty beneath. Careful, Evelyn. You and I both know secrets cut both ways. Do you really want Mr. Drake to know everything about you? Her chest tightened, panic clawing at her ribs. There were things she hadn't told Alexander, things Jonathan could twist. But before she could speak, Alexander stepped forward, placing himself squarely between them, his voice like a blade drawn in the dark. You try to touch her, or that child, and I'll bury you so deep in legal battles, you'll wish you'd never left your cell. Evelyn is under my protection now, and I don't lose what's mine. The word hung heavy in the air. Mine. Jonathan's smirk faltered for just a fraction of a second before he turned on his heel, signaling to his men. This isn't over, he tossed over his shoulder as he strode out the door. Enjoy playing house while you can, Drake. Sooner or later, she'll remember who she belongs to. The doors slammed shut. Silence followed, broken only by Evelyn's shaky breath. Alexander turned to her, his eyes burning, his hands curling into fists at his sides. You should have told me. Her throat constricted, tears spilling hot down her cheeks. I was afraid you'd see me the way everyone else does, as tainted, as damaged. He stepped closer, brushing a tear away with his thumb, his voice a fierce whisper. No, I see you as the bravest woman I've ever known, and I swear to you, Evelyn, I won't let him take what we've started to build here. Not him, not anyone. She collapsed into his chest, the tension breaking at last, his arms wrapping around her like armor. For the first time, Evelyn allowed herself to believe it. Maybe she wasn't alone anymore. Maybe she belonged. The next week was a blur of headlines, paparazzi, and whispered speculation. Evelyn could hardly step outside the estate without cameras flashing, each one desperate to capture the fallen fiancé of Jonathan Hale, now entangled with the city's most eligible millionaire. Jonathan was relentless. He filed petitions, spoke to tabloids, painted himself as a man wronged by a woman who had betrayed him. The child is mine, he declared in one interview, smug in his tailored suit. Evelyn belongs in her rightful home with the father of her baby. Alexander Drake is nothing but a temporary distraction. Each word was a dagger Evelyn carried in her chest. But Alexander didn't waver. In his office, with his team of lawyers, he worked day and night to dismantle Jonathan's claims. Evidence of fraud, past abuse, and debts piled high against Hale. Slowly, piece by piece, Alexander stripped him credibility. Still, Evelyn felt the weight of shame pressing on her shoulders. One night, after putting her baby to sleep, she found Alexander in the study, staring at case files. Alexander, she whispered, her hands twisting in front of her. He looked up, instantly attentive. What is it? She swallowed hard. There are things you don't know, things Jonathan could still twist against me. When I was with him, I ignored the red flags. I thought I loved him, and when I realized what he was, I was too afraid to leave right away. People said I was complicit, that I knew, that I turned a blind eye. Her voice broke. What if they're right? What if you see me the same way? Alexander rose slowly, crossing the room until he stood inches from her. He cupped her chin, forcing her to look into his eyes. Evelyn, listen to me. His voice was low, commanding, unshakable. Surviving a monster doesn't make you guilty. It makes you strong. Do you understand? He deceived you, used you, hurt you. But you walked away. That's the only truth that matters to me." Tears burned her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt absolved. "And as for me," Alexander continued, brushing a tear away with his thumb, "I don't see guilt. I see the woman who gave me something no one else has ever dared. A reason to believe in family again." Her knees nearly buckled. He caught her, holding her steady. And for the first time, she let herself lean fully into him. The hearing drew a crowd. Reporters swarmed the courthouse, lenses flashing as Alexander's car pulled up, Evelyn clutching her baby in her arms. Inside, Jonathan sat smugly at his table, his lawyers armed with papers. But Alexander had prepared his own arsenal. The judge listened as evidence spilled out: bank statements, falsified property deeds, testimony from former employees. With every new revelation, Jonathan's smirk faltered. The final blow came when Alexander's lawyer produced a document Jonathan had never expected anyone to uncover. A recording of him threatening Evelyn during one of their last arguments before she left. His voice, cold and venomous, echoed through the silent courtroom. "You'll never escape me, Evelyn. Even if you run, I'll find you. And when I do, I'll take everything you have, even the child." Gasps rippled through the room. Jonathan's composure cracked. His lawyer scrambled. But the damage was done. The judge's ruling was swift and merciless. Jonathan Hale's petitions were denied, his credibility destroyed, and his fraud charges expedited for trial. Evelyn sat frozen, her baby's small hand curled around her finger, as Jonathan was escorted out in handcuffs, his eyes burning with impotent fury. For the first time in years, she was free. 2 weeks later, the storm had passed. The paparazzi dwindled. Headlines shifted to new scandals. Life in the Drake estate softened into a new rhythm. Evelyn read in the nursery. Alexander handled business calls, but always returned before dinner. And the baby's laughter filled halls, once known only for their silence. One evening, Alexander led Evelyn into the grand ballroom, the very same space where her water had broken, where chaos had begun. The chandeliers glittered overhead. A small string quartet played softly in the corner. Confused, Evelyn glanced at him. "What is this?" He smiled faintly. "Closure, and a new beginning." He took her hands, his dark eyes locking onto hers with unshakable certainty. "Evelyn, when I first saw you here, I thought you were a disruption, an accident in the middle of my carefully controlled life. But the truth is, you weren't the disruption. You were the answer to everything I didn't even know I was missing." Her breath caught as he dropped to one knee, pulling a velvet box from his pocket. Inside, a diamond gleamed, catching the chandelier's light. "I don't just want to protect you, Evelyn. I don't just want to claim this child as mine. I want us, a family, a future, forever." He opened the box fully. "Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face, her heart hammering so loudly she could barely hear the music anymore. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, her voice trembling with joy. "Yes, Alexander. Yes." The quartet swelled as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms. The baby stirred in his crib at the edge of the ballroom, as if sensing the shift in the world around him. Alexander pressed his forehead to hers, his voice a reverent promise. "You're mine, Evelyn, and I'm yours. Always." And for the first time, she believed it.